Scott,
Hello?
are we live?
Hello? Is this thing live yet? All right, I think we're live. I think we're live. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure that we're live.
Oh yeah, yep.
I feel like it's been a minute. Ladies and gentlemen, we are live on a Wednesday night. It's a little after 7:30. It's been a minute. We haven't talked to you guys. It's not even 7:30. Now I'm rushing time. It's we haven't been on since right when I was talking about the epic 3 to 4 weeks since the Thanksgiving
and
match.
It was epic.
Yeah.
It really was epic.
You guys made it epic.
We had such a blast. We had the big Black Friday sale, was insane. Then we had the Christmas party here. We opened up at the farm. We had a bunch of stuff going on at the coral farm. And then we also got, what else did we end up doing? Oh,
we had the fish sale.
The big fish, we did the bringing in the New Year's with the fish. It was so, because you guys, and I can't get over how many people got new tanks.
Oh,
so many of you guys got new tanks
Lots
this
of
year.
new tanks.
Somebody won a new tank at
what
was that?
It was
for
on the Christmas party.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Waterbox 40.2 went out in a small Honda Civic. I don't know how he did it, but
he made it work.
Totally did. He drove it all the way
Totally
to
made it work.
Boston, too.
You guys are following us on Instagram or Facebook, and you see the stories. It was live on there. So,
it was
yes.
absolute blast. So
It
we
was
just want to
awesome.
say thank you guys so much for all the love. And tonight, what are we talking about, Allie?
So tonight we're talking about beginner corals for people who are just starting their reef tank. So we get a lot of people that come in that want to start their reef tank, but they don't know quite where to start. So that's kind of what we're just going to go over, because we haven't done a video like this in a long time. So we're going to get back into doing that.
Yeah, and that one of the things we get into is a lot of you guys come in here and you try to tell us, all right, we ask a lot of questions. We're always trying to pick and choose like what corals be best for you. We want to help you out. We want you to be successful, so you love this and you keep going. So you'd be like, all right, what do I put here? What do I put here? What do I put here? That's one of the things. But tonight, it's all about Salty Alley with Easy Corals. Allie, go right ahead.
It's all about
snails are pretty easy too. So like Sean pointed out, snails are actually what you start before corals. So there we go.
Yeah, the cleanup crew is the first thing you put in the tank.
Yeah.
No corals. Cleanup crew.
Snail.
Yes.
Okay. So you just started Eugene tank. You just finished cycling. We went through the ugly stage. We had all that brown algae, and you added your cleanup crew, lots of snails and hermit crabs, and now you're ready to add your first coral. So that's kind of what we were talking about. So usually we start with softy corals. So that means that a coral doesn't have a skeleton. So there's soft corals, and then there's stony corals. So stony corals means they have a hard skeleton underneath.
Yeah.
Usually those aren't ones we start with right away. They can be a little more difficult. They're a little more demanding too. You know, they use up calcium and alkalinity and stuff. So we usually get people started with something like mushrooms or leathers. So those are both an very easy coral. There's some mushrooms that are a little bit more difficult, but usually like discosomas, which are I'm sorry, we have no pictures. We had some technical difficulty here.
My apologies, folks.
So we don't have any pictures, but if you guys were to come in, those are the corals we would recommend to you. It would be mushrooms, leathers, and like zoas, a lot of zoanthids. Like there's a lot of easier zoas.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Like I said, the leather, like the Sinulera leathers and toadstool leathers, those are all like different things you could start with. And then there's like your harder corals that you wouldn't want to begin with, and that's usually you want to avoid any stick corals, so like any SPS. So anything like any of those branchy corals, we kind of want to wait until we know that our tank is stable and it's doing well. So there's not necessarily a timeline on it. A lot of people are like, when can I put that in? It's mainly, we give you like an idea. So usually with SPS, I just see you in the camera. So usually with SPS, we want to wait, anywhere for, like I said, it depends, but usually after 6 months or so. And then also too, one of the biggest things is anemones. Yeah, that's where I was going to go with. A lot of people start their tank with a pair of clownfish, and they want to add anemone for their clownfish. But unfortunately, we highly do not recommend putting an anemone in until you're past like your 6 month mark. The tank goes through a lot of swings even after your cycle. So you go through an ammonia, nitrate spikes in your cycle, but even after that, a lot of your parameters that you don't test for it are all over the place. Your alkalinity and calcium are going to swing, but also a lot of the other minerals and stuff that we don't normally always test for can swing, and anemones are really sensitive. So we usually wait until your tank's more established before we start adding anything like that. Clownfish don't need an anemone. They can be totally fine without one, so there's no rush on that.
Of course.
And then,
what about corals? All right, so we get into it, and what about corals? A lot of people are like, well, I don't want to get that because it might take over.
Yes,
What would be some of
yes,
those
that's a
corals?
very
Oh,
And if I
like
did get into
GSP?
that, how would I control it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, green star polyps are a huge one. That's a very great beginner coral, but it's a coral that can definitely take over like crazy. So, there's a few things you can do. So, with GSP, it's like an underrated coral. I think it's really beautiful. It's just it can grow like crazy. So, one of the things that I highly recommend, and what we all recommend, is to have a rock on its own island, away from anything else. So, GSP it'll only grow out. It can't detach and grow somewhere else. Like there's mushrooms that they split off babies and they can float around the tank and land anywhere. And they can become an issue too. There's some mushrooms like discosomas especially grow like crazy, and you could have a million of them all over your tank. And they're hard to control because even if they're on their own rock, like I said, the babies can just float around and they'll land on other rocks. So, but the GSP, that only just grows out. So the best thing is to have it on its own island where it can't grab onto anything else. If it can touch any other rock, yes, Jeff, GSP,
Yes.
Not GPS, GSP.
GSP. Yeah.
So if it's near any other rock or glass, it'll grow right on top of that. And even on sand, it will start to grow out onto sand, reaching out for other stuff. So that's how I have mine. And mine's on an island. And as it starts to grow out, you just rip off the little stragglers and bring them here, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
So it will start to eventually, once it's run out of space, it'll look for somewhere else. So you just keep fragging it back. But that's the best way to control GSB because it's very easy. Like I said, it'll just stay where it is and it won't detach. There's stuff like pulsing xenia, which is super popular. People love that stuff, and it is really, really neat. The thing with pulsing xenia is, even though it's a soft coral and it's relatively easy, it actually doesn't like new tanks because it likes dirtier tanks. Tanks
nitrates.
that have, so tanks that have higher nitrates, like if you have a lot of fish, a more established, kind of dirtier tank, they actually like that better. They do better that way. Yes, GSP on the back wall. So I saw Bob was saying that you could put GSP on your back wall. A lot of people do that. And actually, it's really, really neat. You just want to make sure that your rocks aren't against your back wall because they'll cover everything. Mm-hmm. And that can become an issue because if your GSP grows on your rock, it's very hard to remove. So even if you were to peel it off, if any little spot is left, it will just keep growing. And it's really hard to eradicate, and it'll grow on top of other corals. It doesn't care about anything, and it'll sting anything, and it's hard. I know from personal experience because I made that mistake. I had to throw all the rock away. It was awful. So yeah, it's a great coral to start with. Just make sure you have it controlled. And as far as mushrooms go, they're, like I said, they can let go and kind of detach. Same with Kenya trees, like Bob said. Kenya tree is, we don't even sell it here because it's worse than probably any of them.
That was what I was gonna bring up.
Yeah.
Because Kenya tree it's
so
awful.
I don't think anybody really knows this, but I have a saltwater tank, contrary to popular belief, and I have Kenya tree in there, and it's just like I need to get it out before it starts like breaking apart and like going everywhere. It's just like it started like this big, and now it's like this big, and now I have two pieces that are this big, and like I'm waiting for it to just start going everywhere. Yeah, so I need to get rid of it.
So how Kenya tree repopulates is it just like cinches off and falls off.
Kinda
so
like
just
leathers do that too.
Yeah,
right?
it just drops branches off because it's a leather, and that's how leathers usually grow too. A piece just like cinches and then it just falls off, and that's how they have babies. And Kenya tree does it like crazy, and you'll find a million of them. So, and they're another thing that's really hard to eradicate. Like I said, if you pull it off the rock, if it leaves any bit of the foot left, it'll come right back, and it just keeps reproducing like crazy. We don't carry it because it's just more trouble.
Corals, it just keeps growing, and it's just terrible. It's just a terrible coral. What else would you say that's horrible? That's a coral that you would not want in your tank. Like in general. For you, I'm on your own personal opinion. You know what I'm saying?
Me personally, it depends. So, me personally, there's some corals like pallies that grow like crazy, and some of them more than others. And some zoas too are just insane. And you can ask Joe how much he loves pallies.
I will never touch a pally in my life ever again.
So I made the mistake of putting Pandoras in my tank, which are a type of pally. Are they a pally or zoa? They're one of those. But and they have taken over, and they're another one that's really hard to remove. And I've learned the hard way. They'll grow on everything and anything. So there's a lot of zoas that don't do that, and they're really beautiful. And the Pandoras aren't even that pretty, and now they're everywhere. So me personally, that Kenya trees definitely wouldn't want. So What do you think, Scott? What do you think?
I mean, right now. I'm totally on the pally kick, but I definitely think the Kenya tree is the worst.
Oh,
That's
absolutely.
the only one. I think
Kenya tree is the worst.
GSP you can control.
Yep.
I even feel like Xenia you can control to a point.
Yeah, to a
But
point.
Kenya tree, I feel like you can't control.
Yeah.
But that is definitely, and then some pallies can get out of control very quick, very fast.
And they're dangerous.
Depending on the types they are. Like I do like Captain Americas. I think
Yes,
Captain
they're
Americas are very cool looking.
And they're not
good.
as bad. They don't grow as fast.
But I mean,
Some
Hello,
are.
ladies. Steve Tremblay's joined the chat.
Yes.
Hello, Steve.
But all those look really like I really like some of those, but that's it. The other ones, the green ones, they get you. They just overtake everything.
Yes.
They take out every coral. There's just no bueno.
No bueno.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some that you just want to just avoid, or just try to. What's wrong with that?
Leave the live stream.
So there's just there's some corals that we do kind of like we just avoid altogether, and then some that you can control that we recommend as a starter. And like I said, just try to avoid any stony stuff to begin with. There's some LPS that are easier that we would recommend.
Like one of the better LPSs? Like you just got a new tank, it's up and running.
Yeah.
It's one of your first corals. What would you do for an LPS?
So because it's probably more for newer people in the hobby. So an LPS stands for large polyp stony, which it's a coral it's most of the corals we have here actually. So it's basically anything that has a skeleton but has like big polyps. So for example, torches, hammers, Duncans, those are all large polyp stony. So for like a newer tank, I think Duncans are a really good one. They seem to do really, really well. They're a fast grower, and they're not super demanding, and they're not super picky. They're one of the easier LPS to start with for sure. What else? I would recommend trumpets for sure. Yep, candy canes. Candy canes or trumpets. They're a great coral to start with, and they're cool. And honestly, like, let's see, what else? I'm trying to get a look here. Trying to rack my brain.
I mean,
I would
any
say
sort of like things like
Gorgonians?
Yeah. Well, they're not enough.
I mean, yeah, but still, I'm like,
just
I know
trying
that.
to think. Yeah. So let's see. You could.
I'm gonna go with Fabius.
Of course, Fabius. Scott's favorite Fabius.
So many Fabius.
So many Fabius. Even honestly, like I find that hammers do okay. I would avoid torches to begin with. Torches can be finicky and they're kind of weird. So try to start with like if you want to like an Euphilia, something flowy like that. I think a hammer is the best option, or even maybe a frog spawn. But again, I would wait a little bit after you've added like your soft stuff to see how that does before we start adding anything like that. But that's what I would recommend. Any of those, like I said, Duncans are great. They reproduce like crazy. You'll get a million heads on it really quickly.
It's fun watching them grow too, because you see
sure.
pretty good growth on them fairly quick. Same thing with the trumpets. So it's kind of watch that and it gets you fun and excited about it.
For sure.
And then some like the mushrooms, the different types of mushrooms, the different color diversity, and the biggest thing you're placing it on is like level, right? So your tank's Joe's face, right? I'm looking for something here, I'm looking for something here, and I'm looking for something here. Mushrooms are great for that bottom level. Even GSP, if you want to put something on the bottom here, a rock separate. So a rock would be right here. Another thing is, what I'd be thinking is like for that mid-level, I like any sort of Euphilia, your trumpets, or anything else.
And then Scott's face is a Holy Grail torch.
Yeah. Now, when I do a top level up here, that's when you kind of get more into SPS. What would you say a beginner SPS?
So beginner SPS, I would do something like Digitata. Digitata is a really good one. There's
Purple Digi.
Purple or usually like red digi. You could do purple digi too. It's one of the easier, faster growing SPS, and even like Monties are usually pretty good. Purple stylos are great, which we have a lot of right now. We've got a whole bunch. Yep. And I also wanted to mention, because Evie pointed out too, Acans and Blastos are another really good early on coral, especially Acans.
Yeah, we forgot all about.
I know, totally didn't think of it. Blastos are great for low light. You don't have say you started with not maybe the best light, but you want something that's nicer, and cool. But you don't, you only have leathers, but you want something like stony like that, but you just don't have quite the light for anything. Blastos are great because they do really well in low light tanks.
So on Acans, honestly.
Yeah, Acans too. They do good on the bottom of the tank, on the sand beds.
Acans are not getting the love that they used to get a couple of years ago. I'm telling you right now, you want to add color with that oranges, those reds, Acans is the way to go. The only thing is with Acans, if you have a coral beauty or any sort of angel, they're going to snack on them. Peppermint shrimp. Yes. They love them. That is, you just can't do them with angels. It's the first question I ask. Is when I start dissing.
No angels, guys.
But good flow. But they just, when they're big, fat, and puffy, you got those different colors. Acans look fantastic.
For sure, I love my Acan, and they grow fast too. If they're happy, they'll grow really fast. So definitely a good starter one. Let's see. Christina says their Duncans and Frog Spawns are doing great. Yeah, they're, like I said, they're a really good starter LPS. They seem to do really well. And like I said, torches, they're something to wait on because they're just a little more picky. I don't know exactly why, but they just are. And then let's see. Once you've hit your 6-month mark, and you could even add like an anemone. Not a coral, but still something to bring up because everyone asks about it. So anemones usually after 6 months, as long as everything's going well, that's something you could add as well. Just keep in mind if you're going to put an anemone in your tank, watch out for your corals because they'll walk all around and sting stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so, and then once we start adding corals too, sorry, I'm like all over the place, but it's coming to me. So once we start adding corals too, once you start adding LPS or anything that's stony like that, now you're going to start testing your tank and making sure that your alkalinity and calcium are on point. Because that's when things start to change. Once you start adding those corals, your levels are going to start to move around. And that's when it becomes really important to be on top of that as well.
Especially when you start adding those sticks. They're just going to soak up the calcium and alkalinity.
That's actually,
they use it
overnight.
Yeah, no, like you're really right on that. Because that's the biggest one of the things is you start getting into it. You start picking out some corals. And you've just been doing water changes, but you haven't done any dosing. Yeah. And then you start seeing, some things not looking as good. You start shrinking in. And that's usually the time where people are like, all right, what's going on here? And usually the first thing we get hit with is you have an alk drop or you have a calcium drop. And they usually got kind of like a seesaw. They're right side by side. And that's one of the first things. That's when we get into dosing.
For sure. And also, too, as your corals start to grow and they start to do well, it's always changing. Your levels are always going to be changing. So you always should test multiple times. I honestly, like when you're beginning and you're adding corals, I would test a few times a week. Just make sure, things are, going well. And once you've added some corals and you've tested for the week, make sure everything's good. You can start to dose, make sure that those levels are staying stable. Because when your levels are all over the place, that's when it starts to cause problems in the tank.
We just don't want to dose to dose. That's one of the biggest things in the
to
beginning.
Test before you dose.
You think you can just do maybe just Monday and just Tuesday, but you don't even know what the parameters are. You got to know what they are because you got to know what you have to get everything at. For
sure. Yeah. And, like he was saying, if you're a lot of people when they first start dosing, they just follow the instructions on there and just dose every other day or something. But you definitely want to be on track of testing it before you do that, and then following the math instructions on there to figure out exactly how much you need to bring it up to how much. So usually with a mixed reef tank, you have your LPS and your soft corals and maybe a couple stony corals. You usually want to keep your alk around like 8.5, and then your calcium anywhere from like 420 to 460 area. So that's what we're shooting for. So what I recommend when you're in that beginning stage is to test every day at the same time to see how much your alk and calcium start to drop. Again, this is once you've started adding more corals. When you add like 3 or 4 like soft corals, you're not going to see much. But definitely once you start adding harder corals with skeletons and stuff, you do want to start keeping track of that. And if you test like 3 days in a row at the exact same time, you'll start to see how much it drops in that amount of time. And then you can kind of get an idea on how much to dose to keep it stable at that point. Never just pour it in, because sometimes that does happen, and we sometimes see tests people bring in and corals aren't looking good, and sometimes their alk is 15 because they didn't know that they had to test. So you definitely need to make sure you're testing when you're dosing, not just dosing.
And that's a learning trial. When you get into reefing, a lot of people go into it and not really know what to expect.
Exactly.
You have to crawl before you can walk. And that's one of the things we kind of get you into, and that's what we do here, is we get you and you kind of move your way up.
For sure. I mean, we all started somewhere. This one just kind of started, so we're helping him out.
Jeff on here too.
Jeff too.
Jeff as well.
He's picking up on it really well.
He's got a bigger tank.
So we've all started there. Even Scott did. So definitely don't feel bad if you're not getting it. That's what we're here for. We want to help everybody out, and just we're always here to answer any questions. No such thing as a dumb question in this hobby. So keep that in mind.
Of course not.
Anything else you want to go over, Allie?
I mean, I think that's really it. Did you have any? Yeah, I think you have some things to talk about.
Scott and I have some things to talk about.
I do want to talk about, Allie is coming with us, Frag Farmers Market, the biggest one-day show in the entire U.S. If you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you check it out. It's up near Yukon. It's right at the school system. It is an absolute blast. If you guys definitely want to check that out, that is March 7th, Frag Farmers Market. It is an absolute blast. Biggest one-day show. We'll be there. I am taking Salty Alley. Chris Kaz, you going?
I got 4 creations.
Chris Kaz going with Coral Creations, bringing Salty Alley. We're going to have a nice little crew up there. Don't forget, with the last table in that whole thing, with the last booth, you can't bang it. This will be probably the last time we're bringing out the monster huge selection of corals, our monster 4 tables. But we hope to see you guys there for upcoming events. What we have going on, Joe and I heading out to Houston, Texas. For 3 days. We'll be at the Fish Gallery. And then
I can't wait. I'm so excited.
It's
Everything's bigger in Texas.
We're going to head out there. And then also, I'll be at the family reunion tour for Waterbox in February 1st and the 2nd. Anything else you guys want to do?
Yeah, before we go, so Chris asked in the comments what we think about Hannah checkers for calcium and alk. So we actually just started carrying the Hannah checkers here, and I absolutely love the alk checker. I have it at home, and it's been so convenient, so easy. And the calcium is also, but you just have to keep in mind that they're a little more scientifically involved. So you just want to make sure that you're following all the instructions super, super carefully. And you want to be really careful. You don't get your fingerprints on the vials, and you want to make sure you rinse the vials with RO. So it's a lot more like, you just got to be more careful with it to get accurate results. A lot of times people get inaccurate results with the calcium checker just because sometimes they're not quite following, exactly what you need to do. So it's a little bit more involved, but it's a really accurate, really great way of testing your tank. And you have to buy the reagents for it. So one of the great things that it's great for is if you, like what I like to do is once every couple of weeks, I use my Hannah checker to see exactly what my stuff's at. But in between that, I use my Salifert test kit, just kind of to save a little bit of money on that. The Salifert's a really good, accurate test. I really like it. But with the Hannah checker, you're getting an exact number. So I like to use that Hannah checker as a backup, like this is what it is. And then I use the Salifert to make sure it's just staying stable. So we definitely like them a lot so far. We've had a lot of good response with it, and I like it.
Evie wants to know if you're bringing any of the sweet hoodies to the show.
We're bringing sweet hoodies to the show.
Yes.
We are totally sold out.
We're totally sold out. I owe a lot of people hoodies. Definitely hire one. We're going to bring more hoodies.
Sign them, we can.
You are so ridiculous. What else do we want to get into? Anything else at all there?
I think that's really it, guys. We
just want to let you know, everyone that started out here, every single one of you guys that got anyone here, I want to know what your first coral was. What was the first one that got you into it? Yes. Because a lot of people get that first one that's super awesome, and it makes you want to get the next one and the next one. In the comment section below, let us know what the first coral you got was. I'm wicked curious about that, what the average coral really is.
Let's see. Scott, what was your first coral at the store?
What was your very first coral at the store, Scott?
It was definitely GSP.
Yep.
GSP.
Mine was my first
GSP. So I got my very first coral. It was, what was it? It was a GSP, and it was here. I got my first GSP ever here when we had the big 180 on the back wall, or 150.
When I had the big racks with all the corals inside it.
And against the back wall there. That's when I got my first coral. So
that's also when you had like the big pacu here too, right?
Oh yeah, we had freshwater here.
The big red tails and pacu.
So so definitely let us know in the comments below, and we'd love to see that. It's pretty cool.
Evie said she wants all the autographs, so we're gonna get the silver sharpies out. And, Sharpies. I'm from Boston,
So we see 2 Duncans in there. Yep, Duncans are a good starter coral.
Duncans are a great starter coral. Like I gotta say, when you get into corals, I think Duncans are within your top 5. That's within your first 5 corals. Is definitely Duncans. I feel like a trumpet.
Mushrooms. We got mushrooms and GSP
always.
and trumpets.
GSP,
yep.
Trumpet,
So basically everything we said. That's good.
Yes.
Alrighty, guys, we're getting out of here tonight. We appreciate you guys. Sorry we haven't done a live video. Join us every Wednesday night pretty much now on around 7:30. Yes. Make sure you hit that follow, notification, subscribe button. And if you haven't checked out
YouTube, baby,
Joe's been doing a pretty good job with the YouTube.
We're pumping out content on YouTube. If you didn't see the last one, Chris broke in the store and stole fish for the farm.
Stole all my fish.
My goodness. Like, he stole so much money. I don't know how we're still in business. My goodness.
Gotta take care of the farm.
Yeah, gotta take care of the farm. But anyways, go check that out on YouTube. Links are on the Facebook page somewhere, but you'll find them.
All right, take it away, YouTube.
Have a great night, guys.
Yes,
come visit
as
us.
Always.
We'll be here. Keep on reefing, baby.
Appreciate all the support. Keep it fresh.